Hi everyone, and welcome back to our bi-weekly speaker series, Data Society. We're sorry for the few minutes delay. We had a few technical difficulties. So if this is your first time with Data Society, our aim is to bridge the gap between industry and academia by providing students with opportunities to experience data science outside of the classroom and make it accessible to everyone across all disciplines. This is actually our final live speaker for this semester, and we'll be back with more in semester two. Today we have Hannah from Deloitte. So Hannah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, guys. It's great to be here. Hey everyone, I'm Hannah Lynch. I'm working as a consultant with the Deloitte Blockchain Team. So the blockchain team is relatively small in terms of the size of Deloitte. So Deloitte in Ireland is about 3,000 people, and the blockchain team, 30 people at the moment. So the team is divided between, I'd say 70%, 30% between technical people and business strategy. So not coming from a computer science background, I was in Trinity studying business and law. I'm working on the strategy and business side of the team. So I suppose kind of bridging the gap between the very, very techie people on our team and the client teams, and trying to understand client needs and communicate those back to the dev team. So really exciting area to be in. Funny, today definitely kind of a big day in the blockchain world. The Bitcoin has hit 19,000 for the first time in almost 3 years. So 3 years ago, I think almost to the day, blockchain hit its highest heights of around $20,000. And then lost a quarter of its value promptly in about a day. So it's been building since then. It was a bit sickening to see how high it's climbed today, given the first day that we started working from home during COVID, it hit its 2020 low. So if you'd bought Bitcoin back in March, you could have bought it, I think, for just less than €5,000. So you would have nearly quadrupled your money at this point. So unfortunately, I'm not one of those people, but an exciting day in the blockchain calendar nonetheless.
So if you are...
Oh, I think he's frozen there.
Yeah, I think Sam's frozen. Okay, that's fine. I'll keep the questions in. Oh, Sam, are you back?
Yeah,
Sam?
can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was warning people, if you own Bitcoin, it might be the time to go. So maybe the government heard me and blocked me out. But okay, so I guess, Hannah, for anyone that's watching who might not have a great understanding of blockchain, do you want to just give a quick kind of overview of blockchain technology and Bitcoin and all that, just in a few sentences or however you would put it?
Yeah, of course. So despite my just mentioning Bitcoin there, wouldn't be something that I would deal with in my day-to-day work. So the blockchain lab is very much focused on blockchain as a technology, and Bitcoin is probably like the more widely known use case from blockchain, but certainly not the only one. So blockchain, the technology that underpins Bitcoin, is a digital, decentralized, and distributed network that allows anyone on that network to share information. So what makes it different to platforms that have come before it? So we run through those 3 Ds. So the first is digital, exists on the internet, but doesn't make it widely different, but decentralized. So there's no single point where a decision is made on the blockchain network. So that's kind of one of its key value points. So if we think of any traditional institutions that we have at the moment, or traditional technologies, they're always run by a central operator. So Facebook, even though you can access Facebook from any laptop, any device connected to the internet, anywhere in the world, all of the decisions are kind of made on that centralized hub, facebook.com. Same with, say, like a banking system. Even though you can take out money from an ATM or from your account wherever you are in the world, your bank or your account is managed by a single entity, like your bank, whatever that might be. And so blockchain is different in the sense that there's no single entity managing the information. The information is managed by the network, and that's one of the points which makes it really unique. Also, to a degree, makes it a little bit scary. It's a big unknown for us, and I think that's kind of a little bit of why it's gained a bit of a reputation for kind of being a broker for some of the darker parts of the internet. Definitely there's a lot less transparency when there's not a single body in the middle to make sure that everything is like has all the checks and balances there. And then distributed. So similar to decentralized, the processing on the network is done by on the blockchain network by millions of nodes across the network, all working to process all of the transactions going on there, whether those are an exchange of value or an exchange of information. So again, that just means that there's millions of nodes across the world kind of running the blockchain network, not run by a central entity, which again, kind of one of the unique selling points of the network. One of the things I think is particularly interesting about blockchain as a network, in comparison to things that have come before it, is that for the first time, the blockchain network kind of shows us the real potential to exchange value from peer to peer. So at the moment, what we've managed to do with the internet is to exchange data. So if I want to send Sam a photo, or if I want to send Sam a file, I can do that, but what it does is it copies my file or my photo and sends it to Sam. And so it doesn't mean once I send it to him that I can never have it again. If I send a photo to Sam in an email, I still have that photo. Sam just has a copy of it now. And same with value. We think that we're able to send people value at the moment, especially kind of with challenger banks like Revolut, makes us kind of have the illusion that we can send someone money in an instant. So that if I can, again, like transfer Sam €5, he'll see it in his Revolut account in 5 seconds. But what we're forgetting is that there is a central entity there who's checking my account to make sure that I have €5, and then sending that money to Sam, and also kind of being a broker in the middle if something goes wrong, so that I might be able to take that money back that was a mistake. But it doesn't allow us to do those transactions of our own accord, and that's something that blockchain brings into the picture. So if I was to send Sam Bitcoin, the blockchain network would verify that I have enough Bitcoin to send Sam the amount that I want to send him. And when I send it to him, that money is gone. There's no Revolut customer care center that I can call up and say, oh, I didn't mean to do that, or I sent the wrong amount. I suppose like the decisions are made by the individuals on the network, and once consensus on the network is made that the transaction that you want to make is able to be executed, it's executed upon. So that being able to send value, really interesting, whether it's something like Bitcoin, or whether it was the deeds to your house or a valuable piece of artwork, any of those transactions are potentially able to be made on the blockchain network, which poses a lot of really interesting potentials for the future.
Thanks, Hannah. Definitely excellent detailed description there. It's super exciting to hear all this. An article that I came across called "Time to Shine" that I believe you wrote mentions that this is the decade for blockchain to shine.
Yeah.
Why exactly now? Why do you think it has the potential to now?
Yeah, absolutely. Great to hear that you're probably one of the couple of people who clicked into my article. So thank you for that, Ahmed. So yeah, let me see. So blockchain or Bitcoin, sorry, blockchain, has kind of like just graduated past her first decade now as a technology, which kind of reaches an interesting inflection point for growth. And I think particularly with us being in a pandemic, there's been a lot of talk, say like on my team in particular, about like kind of how a technology either kind of sinks or swims when it comes to a point like this. So I think blockchain, while this year has probably been slow enough in terms of like work done in the space, there's a lot of potential for people kind of coming out of the other side of this pandemic to kind of say we need to do things differently and we need a new way to do that. And I think more so than a lot of things on the market, blockchain offers a way to do that for a lot of industries. It's definitely not like a solve all for all problems like some other really interesting emerging technologies like AI and robotics will definitely, I feel like, hit like huge highs in the next couple of years. And I think blockchain doesn't have maybe as wide a use case, or maybe won't be uptaken by as many players as those technologies will. But I think definitely won't be far behind them in terms of growth in the next couple of years.
Brilliant. And your team then in Deloitte, so as a blockchain consultants, do you consult with other firms, with other companies on how they can apply blockchain technology, and what are the sorts of applications that Deloitte and their clients will use blockchain
great question. So yeah, we typically work with like very traditional companies, so not like super cool tech companies coming in to use blockchain. I think often the most interesting examples are companies that are maybe very or not very digitally advanced, who want to use blockchain to kind of leapfrog their organization to the next level. So one really interesting one that I've been working on quite a lot for the last couple of months is blockchain for educational credentials with the Institute of Banking. So they would be a very traditional organization offering banking certifications to I suppose like anyone who's offering financial advice or is a financial advisor in Ireland. It's not a very sexy business, but one that's very important nonetheless. And not a business that would be very digitally advanced, but in order to kind of take their organization to the next level and invest in their future. And they looked to us to see how they could do that. So traditionally companies would come into us just looking for like general consultancy advice. And we definitely don't try and slap blockchain onto everything. It's not a solution for all problems. But for something like educational credentials, it really made sense. So with the project with the Institute of Banking, what we were doing was putting educational credentials on the blockchain, which allows students, say once they've gotten a degree, so say like yourselves when you graduate from your degrees in UCD, instead of getting a transcript, which you could potentially do a bit of a Mike Ross on and forge some of the details on it, potentially even pretend that you went to UCD when you didn't. If you were offered a credential from UCD via the blockchain, that would mean that that information was immutable and could never be tampered with. It would also mean that UCD would have a store of that record, and you would also have a store of that record that would allow you to share that with employers, and that they could kind of get a key directly into UCD's database in order to verify that. So at the moment, verification of credentials is an imperfect process. Probably means calling up the UCD student registry body and asking, did Sam do this course? What grade did he get in this module? Was this the correct GPA that I had for him? So being able to kind of take ownership of our own data and share those credentials ourselves as students is something like a really interesting space to be in, and definitely is a really interesting use case that hopefully will be rolled out to Irish universities in the next couple of years.
It sounds like there's a lot of upsides to applying blockchain, you know, especially in the verification examples you gave. But why do you think it's not as widely adopted right now as it could be? What do you think stops a company from integrating blockchain into their tech stack?
Yeah, I think kind of the scare around Bitcoin is like plays a large part in that. I think like the hype and then the fall of Bitcoin kind of made people think the entire technology was a bit overhyped. And maybe in some ways it was. I think it probably gained a lot of press too early and made people skeptical of it. That said, I think it's grown pretty steadily, which I think is a better way for it to grow, definitely a better trajectory for widespread adoption. But I think people's or organizations maybe aren't ready to move to it yet. They haven't found the correct use case for them. And it's definitely a big mindset move, I think, more so than anything else. Like, not necessarily a huge technical restructuring for a company, but a big mindset move, I think, for executives to move to blockchain and to put information that they have on a public chain. So like, even for UCD, I'm sure the academic registry is very comfortable having all of the files of every single student who's ever went to UCD, either in some central database in a back office or in physical files in the case of some companies. And I think the idea of putting that on a public chain really scares them.
Is there any conflicts with that sort of thing, with GDPR or data protection, you know, having your information public in a way out there on the blockchain? Is that something that you have to take into consideration?
Yeah, absolutely. And a question that we constantly get from clients. So what we do to get around that is we create a hash of information that we put onto the chain. So a hash, for anyone who doesn't know, just looks like an extremely long and illegible kind of string of numbers and letters. And what that is that like is a kind of unique key for any information that we're going to put onto the chain. So I think that there's websites that you can go on to create a hash of information if anyone's ever interested. So if you put in a paragraph of information into a hash creator, it would get a unique hash for that piece of information. And if you so much as remove a space or a full stop, that hash is going to change. So by hashing information on the chain, it means that if someone, say in some way was able to hack and get that information, what they're going to see is this big string of illegible numbers. They're not going to see like Sam's date of birth, Sam's academic history, what he got in biology. None of that information is going to be there. They're just going to see this big string of numbers. So that's kind of the key way we get around those GDPR concerns.
Okay, so we might just talk a little bit about your experience at Deloitte, and then we might come back to blockchain towards the end.
Yeah, sure.
So did you join Deloitte as an intern first? Is that right?
Yeah, I did. So I joined Deloitte in, let's see, so it's 2020 now. I think in 2018, summer of 2018 as an intern. I was in my third year of college in law and business. And kind of up until months before internships, I thought I was going to do a law internship. That was really the direction that I was going. And I kind of happened across blockchain sort of by accident. I attended a Matheson blockchain hackathon under the guise of writing an article about it. And they kindly allowed me to attend. And when I got there, Niall Dennehy, who's the founder of the Irish blockchain company AidTech, was there as a speaker. And so his company worked to use blockchain to create greater transparency around donations. So like predominantly the donation of aid, which is a huge area of fraud. So like countries donating billions in aid to third world countries every year, and so much of that goes missing. And that was something that his company felt really passionately about changing and creating for greater transparency about. And so that use case, like for me, like sparked an instant interest, and to see how this new technology could be used to do that. And at that hackathon, I met the Deloitte Blockchain Team. So kind of changed my tact away from deciding to become a lawyer and decided that I'd look at blockchain. So yeah, I applied for an internship with the Deloitte Blockchain Team that summer, and absolutely loved working with them. Really, really interesting and motivated team, and like really generous with the amount that they gave me to work on. Brilliant at giving like speaking opportunities, opportunities to discuss blockchain and get really involved in projects and weigh in with my opinions. And then that September, they invited me to stay on as a part-time intern during my final year of college, which is an absolutely incredible opportunity. And then that led me to my graduate contract with them, which started about a year ago. Weirdly, most of it's been online. So I've been working at home now almost as long as I was in the office, which is very strange.
Brilliant. And just in terms of the sort of work that you've been doing as you've kind of progressed up through your time in Deloitte, what's the amount of responsibility that you've had since you joined? Has that changed much? Do you find yourself doing different work now than you did when you first joined?
It's very varied, I have to say. And I kind of think a little bit about the thing about consulting is the job doesn't essentially change that much as far as what I can see until you decide that you're going to manage people. So you might not be managing a project, you're managing the people who are managing a project, which kind of has like both opportunities and restrictions. But what's been really interesting about that is I think like once you join and you have a team who are receptive and you're willing to kind of put your hand up in a meeting and offer your opinion, I think that opportunity is there. For me, that's been like an absolutely brilliant opportunity, and being able to like weigh in on client discussions, being able to attend high-level client meetings with really important stakeholders. In joining Deloitte on the graduate scheme is the word I was looking for. You kind of progress through your 2 years of your graduate scheme contract, kind of doing your year as an analyst 1, analyst 2, which the 2 years of those look very similar. And I would kind of say that probably consultant and senior consultant level look largely similar on a day-to-day basis. Like you definitely get more responsibility as you move through your career, and more experience, which allows you to weigh in more meaningfully on those client discussions. But for me, I got a brilliant opportunity in the last couple of months to kind of go on loan to the Deloitte digital team, which is the Deloitte like kind of branch that's a bit of a creative agency. And so the blockchain team felt that while we had very, very deep technology capabilities, on projects we were lacking kind of a human-centric design, where we could look at the needs of the end user that we're providing the blockchain solution to. So say for that educational credential one, it wasn't really very useful in a sense to have 10 developers in a room talking about which platform they were going to use and like which different technology stacks that they were planning to use, when the client just wanted to know what the final portal was going to look like and how a student was going to be able to manage it, and how Jim, who was their member who was 65 years old, was still going to be able to get his educational credentials if they moved to the blockchain. So I think being able to get that opportunity to move around the organization and learn from other teams has also been really valuable and is definitely a benefit of Deloitte.
Thanks, Hannah. You obviously did a great job at your summer internship with Deloitte a few years back. This is the time where next semester many students do go on their placements and internships. So what advice would you have for them to excel and like make the most out
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
their
A great question, and definitely something that comes with a lot of apprehension. I think the best thing that I could say is to go in with as much energy as you can give as a person to the team. I think like no matter what team it is and no matter how exciting the team is, every single team seriously benefits from kind of the injection of energy from a young graduate. Like that's why they run their graduate programs. They want young people who are coming in, new ideas, fresh eyes, new way of looking at things, and an excitement to get to know people and to contribute their opinions to projects. And I've found, now Deloitte is the only place I've worked so far, so I won't comment for every organization. But for me, I found that like, no matter who I'm talking to, whether it's someone at the same level as me, or if I'm in a room with client stakeholders or a partner, if you have something valuable and interesting to say, no one's saying, oh no, don't say that, you're too junior to say that. And I think that like just kind of being really forthcoming with like your energy, your curiosity is probably the best thing. Definitely say yes to any and every opportunity that comes your way during those 3 months. It's not that long and it'll fly, and everyone doesn't get contracts at the end of it. So I think really trying to give that energy to the team is the best way to kind of make a really good impression on your team while you're there.
Brilliant, Hannah, thanks. So this next question is apart from blockchain, is there any other technologies that you find yourself working with a lot over and over again? Maybe as you move between clients, do you end up working with the same sort of tools sometimes? What are they?
I won't speak to the tech stack because that isn't something that I would have a great handle on. But tools for clients, I suppose like some of the very typical consulting tools I wouldn't have used before. A lot of stuff around agile delivery, which while I did that in college seemed like a very like boring framework, but a lot of tools that really kind of enable collaboration around that with clients. So things like Jira, Confluence, for agile delivery, and then strangely a lot of weird collaboration tools that have really come into play since we've moved home in COVID. So one in particular that's been interesting I've used over the last couple of months is Miro. So it's I suppose in a sense like a bit of a replacement of a PowerPoint. On it you create a board as if it's a whiteboard. So for us in the lab, particularly on like initial sessions with the client, we'd love to like take our big demo room that we have where the walls are whiteboards, and you'd like map out an entire client process on a wall. You do ideation on one side, map out user journeys on another, and that is obviously really, really difficult to do now that we're from home. Miro has kind of replaced that a little bit as a tool. Trying to think. I mean, yeah, a couple of tools there. I don't know if I would say to anyone like who's on the call, like, oh, go and learn how to use those tools. I think they're probably pretty specific to projects and to organizations. I do think if you're going into consulting, probably some of the best things that you can do is be very good at PowerPoint and Excel. Not the most exciting of tools, but I think still kind of an industry standard for getting work done.
Thanks, Anna. You touched on Bitcoin earlier, and obviously it's been in the news. It's been a hot topic recently with the price hike. And I was wondering, do you think Bitcoin has the ability to scale, which it didn't last time around? But do you think this time it has the potential to actually scale and become, well established?
Yeah, hard to call. So interestingly, the third Bitcoin halving happened there in May, which means that the block reward for mining a block is cut in half. And so the last two times there's been block halving, it's correlated with a very intense boom and a bust. So it's hard to say if that's just a repeat of the same cycle that we're looking at the moment. We're definitely in a boom. Whether the bust will also shortly follow, I don't know if I'm going to make a prediction on here. I do think that the technology has come a long way in terms of supporters from where it was at in 2017. I think organizations have really staked their claim and like built very deep foundations around the technology. So players like Deloitte, IBM, Or3, Corda, WeTrade. So yeah, like a lot of people there who I think have built a very, very strong like client propositions and businesses around the technology. So I think that gives it a lot kind of more stability with the rise, to be able to scale to meet the demand of it. At the same time, yeah, hard to call where Bitcoin is going to go in terms of scale. I do think we're at least looking at a slight bust, if not a complete bust, in the same way we looked at in 2017. But I think the next maybe 6 weeks will probably tell us that.
So one of the biggest criticisms of Bitcoin is the energy consumption of it, and I guess does that criticism extend to blockchain in general, or is it just specifically Bitcoin? And is there a solution to that problem?
Yeah, so it could extend to some blockchain solutions, but the vast majority of them it wouldn't. So the reason that energy consumption is so enormous on the Bitcoin network is because it takes so much energy to mine a block. So we've probably all heard of the enormous Bitcoin mining centers, like under the oceans and up in Iceland and Greenland, trying to keep all of the computers that are mining day and night, they're cold because, or to stop them from overheating. With a blockchain network, you would only need to be processing as fast as the amount of transactions on it. So you can imagine if you're running a private network, you're not going to have anything near the number of transactions that the Bitcoin network has on it. That's kind of an anomaly in that sense. So yeah, energy consumption definitely not like wouldn't be a major concern at all. That would come up with clients looking to build a blockchain network. It's kind of unique to Bitcoin. Hard to know how Bitcoin deal with that. I'm sure there's a lot of like work in the industry and definitely lobbyists against Bitcoin for its energy consumptions. I think I read before that the Bitcoin energy consumption is equivalent to Switzerland's, which is worrying.
Yeah, I was trying to get a bit like an accurate figure to bang out, but I couldn't find anything on the internet. The best I could find was like 7 nuclear power plants or something, which is crazy. But so we have a question or two here from the chat, which I might bring up now.
Yeah,
Eva asked a question about the energy ones, so we kind of covered that already. So we'll go to Adam's question here. What sectors in Ireland do you think could most be or best be revolutionized by blockchain?
Okay. I think like looking at like one of Ireland's largest sectors, say agriculture and the beef industry or dairy industry, they show really enormous potential for being revolutionized by blockchain. I think kind of from a consumer proposition. So one of the really interesting projects we've been working on was provenance of butter. So everyone probably knows Kerrygold and Dairygold. They'd be 2 of Ireland's largest exports. And so Ireland, kind of our sell for our beef and dairy products is that all of our cows are grass-fed. And when you go to other countries, they've been asked, oh, can you prove that? And they've just turned around and said, well, all of the cows in Ireland eat grass. Like, how can we prove it if that's just the way that things are done here? And so I suppose like that's in a sense like slightly trivial, and that like it doesn't like endanger anyone's health. But when you think of kind of greater like need to like look at provenance, say around the horse meat scandal, like obviously consumers are very concerned now with what's in their food, as they should be. And I think kind of being able to provide that end-to-end traceability from farm to fork for consumers has like a lot of potential for that industry to kind of like bring it into the next stage. And also I think for Irish players in that space in particular to kind of differentiate themselves from other people in the market. And I think especially like moving into like more Asian markets where food provenance would be more of a concern, particularly coming off the back of coronavirus and wet markets. Definitely there's a potential there to differentiate ourselves as a nation going forward by providing that.
Okay, so I'll just bring up the last question here from the chat, which is from Justine. Justine is asking, what advice would you give to students coming from non-tech backgrounds who would want to work in tech or data science or blockchain, I guess?
Yeah, great question, Justine. And that was something I really struggled with when I initially met that team. So what I would say is I think the traditional route to get into anything coming out of college is probably like the easiest one to do in a sense of like the work you have to do to get in, but I think like the hardest one to take in terms of guaranteeing your spot. So what I mean by that is like if you just go through the regular application process in any place, you're kind of in with the masses, and your chances are maybe as good as anyone else's on whether your CV gets picked out of the pile and you get an interview. So for me, coming from a non-tech background, being really interested in blockchain, like I really kind of put in the time, like getting to know the Deloitte blockchain team, trying to do things like for my CV around blockchain, like no matter how small they were, taking like an IBM course in blockchain, take something in data science if that's what you're interested in. Definitely with the spare time we have now in this last week before lockdown, like do something on Udemy or whatever it might be to differentiate yourself. One of the biggest recommendations I could give is to get involved in a hackathon. That I think was a complete game changer for me, both in terms of just completely changing my trajectory for what I wanted to do after college, but I think also for setting you apart. I think they're traditionally attended by a lot of computer science students, engineers, maybe because they've gotten the inside hint on them as a great thing to go and do. And I did think like, oh God, like they're really nerdy. Like what would I be doing going to a hackathon? Sure, I can't even code. But just an absolutely phenomenal way to kind of get into a team, see does tech suit you, like see are you there to like be able to like weigh in on decisions on like building a product in a 72-hour space, like are you able to come up with really quick solutions on your feet, are you able to do an elevator pitch to a group of judges, which is probably the best interview practice you could possibly get. I know DataStock did a hackathon 2 weekends ago, which I was involved with as a mentor. So if you guys are running any of those in the future, anyone on the call, I couldn't recommend them more. I think, yeah, they really show a lot of get up and go to an employer about interest in innovation and entrepreneurship, which I think is really, really important moving into a tech space.
Thanks, Hannah. It's great to have someone else plug the hackathon other than us. But no, they are really, really great. So our next question is actually about your experience at the 2017 Startup Weekend, I think that you participated in. I think you finished third overall there, didn't you? Yeah, do you want to talk a bit about your experience
absolutely. There? So yeah, the Google Hackathon back in 2017 was kind of when I did a series of them in November after I did that first one with Matheson where I discovered blockchain. So I got a bit hooked after that. Kind of decided like these were like a really fun thing to do like on a weekend in college, as nerdy as that sounds. And also something that I could see like we're paying dividends and like really valuable experience to put on my CV. Like it wasn't sitting at home writing endless cover letters. Like it was something that was really fun to get involved in. Obviously there's the potential of like winning with your team, meeting so many new people from different universities, and also gaining just completely invaluable skills and pitching. Like we had people from Dragon's Den in that weekend, loads of brilliant kind of like in-house entrepreneurs from like Bank of Ireland and different like startup incubators and stuff throughout the country. I think, yeah, you get such an interesting exposure to professionals that you wouldn't be meeting anywhere else. You're not attending say like a networking event like a Deloitte or McKinsey, BCG, investment bank networking event where everyone's there to try and hound whoever has been sent from the company for 2 minutes of their time in order to gain some in or some foothold into the interview process. I think like you have the opportunity to meet those individuals on the day in what's not necessarily a networking capacity, but definitely provides that. So again, definitely would recommend hackathons if anyone has the opportunity to get involved in them. But yeah, the Google Startup Weekend, absolutely brilliant event. I think it's run every year. I'm not sure if it's occurred this year now in COVID. But that weekend was an open hackathon, so there was no like kind of set problem or set like topic for the hackathon that weekend. So what I worked on that weekend was a digital networking app. So what we built in the space of 72 hours was a functioning app where you could use RFID to tap two phones together, and it would transfer like my credentials to you, sort of in a way that like LinkedIn does, but you'd be able to do it like by the tap of two phones. So not something that has come to fruition since then. That startup idea sort of lived and died on the day, but like an absolutely brilliant thing to get involved in nonetheless, and some really interesting ideas that came out of that weekend.
Sounds like a great idea. Maybe you should pursue it again, Hannah. Continuing on from hackathons, obviously you've had a lot of experience in presenting and public speaking, pitching. What advice would you have for students who maybe still shy away from such opportunities? You touched on, obviously pushing yourself and getting involved with hackathons, but is there any other advice you would have?
So for me, I suppose like I've always been involved in public speaking and debating throughout school, so it wasn't something that particularly intimidated me. That said, I am not someone who just stands up off the cuff and like kind of makes things up as I go along. I think men are so much better at that. But yeah, like so for me, like it's being really prepared. So like coming to a pitch with like not necessarily like 100% of a script in my head. I definitely have the script written down, but it's a danger to try and learn the entire thing off by heart. But I think if you're someone who's nervous, like coming as prepared as you can is definitely a good way to fight off those nerves. Practicing pre-pitch really helpful. And I think also, say in the context of a hackathon, do it with a team. So many teams say like across all of those hackathons presented together. So if you're someone who doesn't like pitching or is nervous about public speaking, but like you really know the technology that your kind of fake idea for the weekend is going to be built on, or you know how the marketing plan is going to work, or you know how this is going to go to market, say like I'm going to take that slide and present that one slide and kind of build up from there. I think any opportunity like that where you can get the opportunity just to jump up and like speak for 2 minutes or 30 seconds and whatever it might be is a great way to just start off. I think if you don't kind of push yourself to jump in, like you're never going to be able to do it. And I think like doing public speaking is 10 times more intimidating than an interview will be, but interviews are also difficult and definitely like a challenge for people who say like shy away from public speaking coming out of college. And there's a lot of those that say like you guys will have to do getting into grad programs or whatever company you want to join out of college. And I think getting as much opportunity to try and have to think on your feet, come up with answers to questions is a great way to do that. So hackathons are a really good way to do that.
Brilliant. So we might just run one more question before we wrap up. So Ahmed, do you have anything you want to ask Hannah before I move on to the last question? I think you're on mute there.
Sorry. One thing I would love to know is, and I think many people in the audience would too, is there, you said Udemy courses would be helpful to stand out and so on, but what would be the best resource to learn about blockchain? Is it again those kind of online courses? Because I don't see any modules in UCD around blockchain or that sort of stuff. So like what do you think would be the best resource?
Yeah, good question. For me, Don Tapscott's books have been a really good resource. Like from a business perspective, I'm gaining an insight into blockchain use cases. I don't know if I would recommend taking a course in blockchain. If you're a developer and that's something you want to gain like skills in, that's definitely useful. From a business perspective, I think like probably a better bet would be like YouTube videos. Don Tapscott, also some really interesting ones that he's done. Or I think like if you can get your hands on any like discussions around like blockchain use cases that might be up on YouTube, I think something like that probably be more interesting and more useful from a business perspective. I think personally, like once you like see a few use cases, for me, I think the best way for me to think about it and be able to like go into interviews and express my interest was to sort of see a few use cases, see how they work. So say like that educational credential one, or tracking food, or like how we can use it to share energy on a grid like they've done in Brooklyn and New York, like seeing a couple of those examples and understanding them and kind of getting excited about them, or seeing if you can come up with your own example. Like I've definitely talked about hackathons enough, but like in like an innovation or entrepreneurial setting like that, I think like that's would best position you to be able to go into an interview and kind of explain your interest and excitement about it.
Brilliant. Okay, well, we might wrap up here unless there's any more last minute questions. You can fire them into the chat, guys. Hannah, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate you taking your time out of your evening to talk to us about Deloitte and yourself and the hackathons and all the rest. So thank you so much.
No problem at all. Thank you so much for having me, guys.